It's time for the King's Report, and this is Tim Elder sitting in for the second King, Cheong Moon, and we are in the 16th year of Changi, and this is the 8th month and the 19th day by the heavenly calendar. I was a bit mixed up yesterday, but I think I got it right today. All right, so today, yes, we have update on Hak Ja Han. You may have already seen it, that she was indicted, and also update also on Wonju and Yoon Young Ho as well. And we also have an update on the new uh, head of the Japanese governing party, who hopes to become the next prime minister in about 4 or 5 days or so. Not such a good report on that, I'm afraid. But yeah, politics is always up and down. And so, anyway, but let's get started first by taking our usual trip around the kingdom and see what's going on there. Right now in Tuncumg, Tennessee, 53 degrees, mostly clear, sunny and nice. Today, 71 for a high, tonight clear and low of 46. And then in Father's hometown of Cheongju, North Carolina province, in what is today North Korea, right now 55 degrees with light rain, but that'll be ending in a half hour or so. And then uh, tonight, though, there'll be more rain, and then tomorrow, occasional rain in the morning, otherwise remaining cloudy, high of 62. At the Turnagain Palace in Matamoros, Pennsylvania. 32 degrees right now there at the Turnagain Palace, and today getting up to 62. Tonight partly cloudy and low of 44. So there is a freeze warning out there as well. Freeze warning, yes, that sounds good to hear. We could use a freeze warning here in Taiwan, I'll tell you, but we're not going to get one. All right. We were talking today that people in Taiwan, they don't even know what antifreeze is because it never freezes. They never, apparently, they don't put antifreeze in their cars. And some people don't even know what it is. All right. So, anyway, serious again here at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas. Currently 62 and clear, warm and less humid with plenty of sun. High of 89 today. Not getting up to 90. All right. And tonight, a low of 60 degrees under clear skies. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, 67 degrees now, clear and low of 63 tonight. Tomorrow, warmer and humid with plenty of sun, high of 88. Getting warm there, huh? And at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, currently 70 degrees, partly cloudy skies, cloudy through the night, 63 for a low. Tomorrow, cloudy with a shower in places, high of 65. And in Ilan, Taiwan, it is currently 83 degrees. Tonight, getting down to 75. Wow, yeah, that is cool. Okay. I might even open the window during the night, turn off the air conditioner. Tomorrow, hot and humid. Oh my goodness, with some sun, a thunderstorm around in the afternoon, high of 94. There we go again. Yes, yes. All right, so let's go to Father's Word. And where are we today? Okay. Today we're in the book, The Life of True Filial Piety. All right, it's not about that. Okay. Let's see, and I'm in chapter 3, section 2. Um, so, so if you are loyal, um, if you're completely loyal until that time, and if you 보조를 마치게, so 보조를 마친다면 보조에서, you're in step. So if you are in step with true parents all the way, then you will receive blessing. But if you are not able to be in step with true parents, 보조를 마치지 못하게 되면 탄식이 벌어지고 there will be lamentation. You will be lamenting. Mhm. So, all right. So that's our little rima for today. Praise God. Yes. True filial piety. Um, so that sort of segues right into the story on Hak Ja Han, because today she was in fact indicted. And first, let's look at the story on that. This is in the. Oops, that's not the right one. There we go. Okay. Um, And I want to talk about true filial piety after we read this story together. A special prosecutor indicts Han Hak Ja, Unification Church leader in Korea, political funds probe. I want to voice my objection again to the people in Tongpyeong, Korea, people in Gapyeong using the term Unification Church, because Unification Church is a term that describes a community of faith that um, accepts Reverend Sung Myung Moon as the returning Jesus and follows his teachings. They do not accept him as the returning Jesus. They do not follow his teachings. Uh, so I think it is highly objectionable that they are using the term Unification Church. Not only did they take Father's Foundation, all the money and all the organization, everything, they even took the name. And I think that is terrible. And that is one of the, well, there's a special counsel in spirit world too. All right. And I think that will be on the list of crimes that the special counsel in spirit world will be investigating. All right. Okay, let's take a look at this story. The special counsel investigating Kim Kyung-hee, of course, is the wife of the former president or the former first lady, indicted Han Hak-ja, president of the Family Federation for Unification, for World Peace and Unification, a Unification Church, on detention on the 10th, that's October 10th, in connection with alleged collusion between religion and politics. So the Korean media, and I guess the prosecution apparently now also is focusing in on um, the content in the Korean Constitution, which says that religion and politics must be separate. And I find that a little bit strange because I think the purpose of that is to prevent a kind of a theocracy from developing. And yes, Hak Ja Han wanted a theocracy. That is certainly true. But what she was doing, though, does this mean that religious? Well, I don't know. Anyway, we'll see how the court handles this situation. But yes, she's being accused of being a part of a or a conspiracy to unite religion and politics, and in fact, preaching, saying that this is the doctrine of her religious group. And we know, of course, that well, the father also had advocated a strong connection between religion and politics, but his idea is that religion educates people who are in politics, and of course, religion educates everybody. Religion is in the prophetic role. It receives God's word, it receives the direction that God wants to take the providence, and then it communicates that to politicians, to musicians, to teachers, to policemen, to everybody, to everybody, so that everybody can be on the same page as God. And so this is the relationship between religion and politics. Now, so that is an education mission, and that is a bottom-up mission. Of course, Hak Ja Han's sin, I would say, her error here is that she was trying to do it top-down by using money to bribe political officials and advance the cause of the religious body by controlling the political figures. And that again is wrong. So the father would never do that. He would never try to advance the interests of the Unification Church by giving money to politicians. Okay, that was never a part of his program. Anyway, okay, so the special counsel said it indicted President Han on detention. On detention, that means that she stays in jail. She's in jail now, and she's indicted on detention, meaning that they're going to keep her in jail on charges including violation of the Political Funds Act and indict former presidential chief of staff Chung Won-ju without detention. And this presidential is not the president of the country. This is Hak Ja Han's chief of staff, Chung Won-ju, or as she's better known outside of Korea as Won-jun McDevitt, without detention. In other words, she's indicted, but she's not in jail. All right, she's not in jail. It also said it additionally indicted former Unification Church World Headquarters head Yoon Young Ho on charges including embezzlement in the course of duty, and indicted his wife, Mrs. A. I love the way Korean. So they're not allowed to use the actual name because of the defamation laws without detention. Without detention, you see here. All right. So here, so who's in jail? Just one person is in jail now. Hak Ja Han. She's the only person in jail. Wonju McDevitt not in jail. Yoon Young Ho not in jail. His wife, Mrs. A or Ms. A, whoever she may be, also not in jail. Okay, and earlier on August 18th, a special counsel had indicted former headquarters head Yoon on detention. Well, he was not indicted. Was he indicted? Okay, well, anyway, he's out of jail now. He was in jail, but now he's out of jail. All right, that's interesting. So now she is the only one who is still in jail. And, you know, uh, it didn't have to be this way. Uh, After Danbury in the United States, the Unification Church slash Family Federation made very sure that father's name was not on anything, not on any legal document. That of course, he uh, was the spiritual head and everything, and we all deferred to his opinion and decisions. But legally speaking, he was not responsible for anything. One of the things that we noticed when Hak Ja Han took over was that she wanted her name on everything. Okay? I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. She wanted everything. And Cook Jinim was very concerned about this. I remember saying, listen, if you start putting your name on stuff, that means that when something goes wrong, you're going to be the one that goes to jail. And sure enough, here we are. She's in jail. Nobody else is in jail now. Now, McDevitt and Wunju McDevitt and Yoon Young Ho, I suspect that they may serve a jail term later on. I don't know. They will almost certainly be convicted, but whether they will get a suspended sentence or not is something that we need to wait and see. Hak Ja Han also, I think, will almost certainly be, well, pretty much certainly be found guilty. But also, whether any part of her sentence or whole sentence may be suspended is something that we'll have to see as well. But anyway, now that she's been indicted, now the next step is the trial. Okay. The special counsel believes President Han, so talking about Hak Ja Han here, and former Chief of Staff Chung, that's Wonju there, gave 100 million won. 100 million won is about $70,000. Okay, so about that's yeah, it used to be 100,000, but now it's about $70,000. Won in political funds and cash to People Power Party lawmaker Kwon Sung-dong in January 2022. The special counsel also found that they, in collusion with former headquarters head Yoon, that's Yoon Young-ho, violated the Political Funds Act by making split donations totaling 144 million won. So that would be about close to about that would be about a little more than $100,000 to Power Party members of the National Assembly and others in March through April 2022 using Unification Church funds. In addition, the special counsel believes the three gave valuables worth 82 million won to Kim Kon-hee, wife of former President Yoon Sung-yeol, on two occasions in July 2022, violating the Improper Solicitation and Graft Act. It also found that President Han, that's Hak Ja Han, and former Chief of Staff Chung, that's Wonju, after obtaining investigative information related to their overseas casino gambling in October 2022, instructed former headquarters head Yoon to destroy evidence. Um, so she's not being indicted for the act of gambling because the statute of limitations on that has passed. However, she is being indicted for what amounts to, well, obstruction of justice. I guess it would be called in the United States, but here, here it's being referred to as destruction of evidence. Okay. Further, the special counsel believes Hak Ja Han, let's just go ahead and call her that, and former Chief of Staff Wonju, together with former headquarters head Yoon, arbitrarily used about 1.35 billion won of Unification Church funds, so that'd be about $1 million, constituting embezzlement in the course of duty and a violation of the Act on the Aggravated Punishment of Specific Economic Crimes, or embezzlement. Uh, Specifically, the special counsel found that in 2022, they provided 100 million won in political funds to Representative Kwon, 210 million won to make donations to the People Power Party, and arbitrarily used 82 million won in purchase costs when providing valuables to Ms. Kim. That's the former First Lady. The special counsel also said that in July 2022, they gave $100,000, that would be USD, in campaign funds to a lawmaker in a country B. Not going to tell you which country, but country B, all right? We've got Ms. A, so now it's country B, get it? And $500,000 in campaign funds to the ruling party in country, guess what? C. So we're going down the alphabet here. So $500,000 in campaign funds to the ruling party in country C. Uh-huh. Not that the country begins with C, just that, they're going down the alphabet. The special counsel also believes former chief of staff Won Ju-jung and Ms. A, that's the wife of Yoon, misappropriated organization funds, embezzlement in the course of duty, and embezzlement under the Specific Economic Crimes Act by turning over about 1.9 billion won. That's about 1.4 billion would be $1 million. So this is a bit more than that, including the Unification Church Cheonsung Fund, right? Cheonsung Fund, I'm sorry, Cheonsung Fund, designated for specific uses to President Han without accounting for it. So Cheonsung, well, Cheon means heaven, and Sung often means victory, but I cannot be sure without seeing Chinese characters, but something like that. So there was a fund called the Cheonsung Fund, perhaps Heavenly Victory Fund, might be the translation. I don't know. Without seeing the Chinese characters, I can't tell for sure. But anyway, it was designated for specific uses, but they just gave it to Hak Ja Han and just let her use it apparently for other things. Regarding this, the special counsel said, we plan to continue investigating the remaining cases subject to investigation under the Special Counsel Act, including alleged violations of the Political Parties Act by the defendants and related accomplices. Meanwhile, the Unification Church expressed deep regret over the indictment on detention. The Unification Church said this indictment stems from a lack of understanding of the symbolic and spiritual role President Han has performed as a religious leader. It added, President Han has carried out a faith-based mission unrelated to political or monetary purposes and had no involvement in directing or carrying out this case. All right. So, yes, although they have not explained what the gambling was about, I guess, but it's pretty clear that they're going to throw the book at her, and we'll see, how the trial goes. The trial will take a while. Um, it'll take a while, and so I'm afraid she is going to be in prison for uh, quite a while. There's no way of knowing for how long that'll be. And so we'll see how this whole thing turns out. But it didn't have to be this way, and that's the tragedy that Kukjinim and Hyungjinim, the second king, really did everything they could to prevent her from going down this path. But she insisted. She insisted, and I myself had that one meeting with her, about a half-hour meeting that turned into a shouting match with her, um, where I was trying to tell her things and she was trying to interrupt me, and I was refusing to be interrupted. Um, but as I've mentioned, in that meeting, I was shocked by a number of things, but certainly one of them was that she saw her sons, but especially Kukjinim, she saw Kukjinim as a threat or as a obstacle to her power, and uh, saw herself as she saw herself as someone who needed to take over the church, um, and remove Kuchinim in the process of doing so, because he was a threat to her her ambition for power. It's my hope that her experience in jail will teach her humility. That's that's going to be a tough lesson for her to learn. Um, but it's my hope that that is what will happen. And with humility, then she may become ready to return to True Father by submitting herself to her son, Hyunjin, the second king. And if she can do that, then she can return to True Father's authority and she can receive the blessing with someone else, not with True Father. And as I mentioned last time, I have no idea who she will be blessed with. That's certainly not on my plate at all. That's way, way, way above my pay grade. But that is, but I do know that everyone uh, needs a, um, a partner in order to get into heaven, and God wants everyone to get into heaven, even the worst of us, even the worst of us. And Hak Ja Han, I would say, by betraying the returning of Jesus, is pretty low, pretty low, pretty low. All right, so that is what is going on there. And so then let's go now to um, what's going on in Japan. A little bit of a difficult situation there because, but I think I've kind of alluded to the possibility that something like this might happen. Hmm. Uh, for the past 26 years, the LDP has been in a political alliance with a party called the Komeito, which is a party that grew out of the Soka Gakkai, or in the US, I think it's called the Value Creation Society, isn't it? It's a party that grew out of a religion, and I think they're officially separate now, but they're still very much that way. And this Komeito is very close to China. Takaichi is not, and they're not mentioning China in this breakup that they announced today. But they, of course, but in politics, they never tell you the truth. They never tell you what's actually going on. And I think this is probably a good example of that. Anyway, let's see what the Japan Times has to say about this. Japan Times, by the way, is it's a globalist, a newspaper published in Japan. Komeito, the Liberal Democratic Party's longtime junior coalition partner, said Friday it plans to leave the ruling camp, parting ways with the LDP and its new president Sanae Takaichi after the LDP failed to accept the party's proposal on political donations. So they're using the proposal on political donations as an excuse, but their approach to China is very, very different. So if Takaichi can still become prime minister, I think that this will actually be a good thing, although in the short run, it's going to cause some difficulties for her, not just in one way. Let's continue. Komeito's decision to end the 26-year partnership with the LDP means the ruling party will need to court opposition parties, likely the Democratic Party for the People or Nippon Ishin no Kai or both, to vote Takaichi in as prime minister in the upcoming parliamentary session to be convened later this month. And actually, originally it was supposed to be convened next week. I don't know if that's still going to happen. Obviously, they'll have to get their ducks in order. They'll have to make sure that they have enough support from parties other than the Komeito to have a majority of the votes in the lower house. The prime minister is elected in the lower house. Komeito leader Tetsuo Saito told Takaichi in a meeting on Friday afternoon that his party will leave the coalition. The party's election campaign support for LDP candidates in national elections, crucial for some of the ruling party's lawmakers, will be suspended as well, Saito said. Now, this is the other thing. So the first thing is that it's going to be more difficult for her to become prime minister. The second thing is that the next time there's an election, the Komeito is going to field candidates against LDP candidates in certain districts. Until now, there's been a kind of a non-compete agreement between the two parties, especially in certain districts. And the LDP candidates and some LDP candidates have depended on the vote from Komeito party members in their district in order to get elected. So now, if the Komeito and LDP go head to head in certain districts where they've had this non-compete agreement before, now it's possible that a third party, perhaps one of the leftist parties, uh, God forbid, maybe even the Communist Party, will actually uh, win that seat, will win more seats in the parliament. So that's another effect that this breakup is probably going to have. We'll have to see. Well, for now, we will for now put an end to the LDP Komeito coalition and take it back to the drawing board. Saito said, told reporters after the meeting, adding that its lawmakers will vote for Saito uh, as prime minister. Okay, so Saito is the head of the Komeito. So Komeito parliament members now are going to vote for their party's head, not for Takaichi, as they would have in the past. Komeito will propose its own policies and become the axis of a moderate reformist movement and call on other parties, including the LDP, to move politics forward, Saito said. And clearly, I think Saito is trying to split the LDP, and we'll see if that works. It may. Stranger things have happened. An issue is whether the LDP is actually a coalition of coalition of blocks. All right, and these blocks all have different sort of kingmakers or different sort of godfathers or heads, and and they sort of take turns making the prime minister. And when Abe was alive, his bloc was the largest in the LDP, and that's so he was able to serve a long time. But otherwise, there has to be a coalition among these blocs within the LDP. It's a coalition within the LDP, all right. And then there has been a coalition between the LDP as a whole and Komito. So we'll have to see what happens within the LDP. So there's going to be a lot of jockeying now for position between now and the election for prime minister. And I'm sure people would be calling up Takaichi and saying, hey, if you make me, um, what shall I say? If you make me minister of construction, okay, that's always a good place to get bribes. If you make me minister of construction, for example, then I will vote for you. Or I'll have my block vote for you, that kind of thing. So that kind of horse trading is I'm sure already going on right now as we speak in Japan. Um, and the issue is whether the LDP was willing to accept a proposal by Komito, which is keen on being seen as the politically clean party. They used to actually call themselves in English the Clean Government Party, but for some reason they stopped doing that. They just call themselves Komito now. To have stricter restrictions on political donations from businesses. Jointly drafted with the DPP in March, the proposal stipulates limiting beneficiaries of corporate donations to party headquarters and prefectural chapters and banning donations to political groups headed by individual politicians, which is essentially a donation to lawmakers. The LDP, by far the top beneficiary of corporate donations, is seeking to avoid restrictions on such donations to individual lawmakers. Saito said Takaichi's response that the party will consider what to do from here on was too insufficient to continue as partners. And I think it's time to mention that the Chonryuguk Constitution minimizes the role of money in politics. It does that by creating a lot of very small constituencies, 2,100 population, right? Not just voters, but population. So whoever runs is going to be well known within that constituency, and or whoever, all the people who run will be well known, and so you, you don't need to be buying television ads or newspaper ads or stuff like that, because if you have served the community enough, you should know. You should have 2,100 friends, or half of that at least. Okay, 50% of that. So the role of money is greatly reduced in the Cheongguk Constitution that was put forward by the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Jae-moon, in October of 2015. And you can go and see that on the Sanctuary Church website. Although we will no longer be coalition partners, we shook hands, telling each other that we'll continue to work toward resolving these political funds issues together with the trust built over the past 26 years, said Saito. So maybe there's still a chance for an agreement. He added that Komeito won't oppose every bill an LDP-led administration submits, including budgets and bills on which the two parties have worked together. Komeito Secretary General Makoto Nishida said that the party made the critical decision to axe talks and leave the coalition on Friday to prevent delaying Parliament from convening. But even with the political donations aside, Komeito has been wary of the LDP under Takaichi, known as a conservative within the party, and it had previously threatened to leave the coalition if Takaichi failed to compromise. And so this is why I'm saying that they're talking about money and all this kind of stuff, but in the background, I think there's China. Okay, Komeito knows that China is not happy with Takaichi. They want to maintain close relations with the Chinese Communist Party, and even though they are kind of conservative, but in Japan, the word conservative means something very different than it does in the U.S. It does not mean small government, all right? And what does it mean? Well, um, uh, let's talk about that another time. Okay. But yeah, it's yeah, because the LDP itself is so diverse. All right. So if you call, so for example, many journalists, when they write about the LDP, they'll say the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, which is neither liberal nor democratic, is how they would write about the LDP. And a lot of that is true. But also, it is as I said, it's a coalition of factions, of coalition of blocks of powers, and so uh, it's hard to really describe them in one, describe their policies and what do we mean that the LDP is conservative? Well, yeah, okay, they're close to business. They're close to business. Okay, we can say that. We can say that for sure. Okay. Anyway, let's continue. Along with discussing the LDP's stance on political donations, when Saito met with Takaichi on Tuesday, he laid out several other issues that concerned his party and its supporters: the LDP's stance on its political funds scandal, Takaichi's past controversial remarks on Japan's wartime history, and her visits to Yasukuni Shrine, which enshrines Class A war criminals and her hardline stance on immigration. So yeah, uh, Class A war criminals, of course, these were people who were convicted of war crimes during the war crimes trial after World War II. That was a trial that was held by the Allied forces centering on the United States. Um, Saito said Friday that the two latter points had been resolved, but not the issue of political donations and the LDP's political fund scandal. In a meeting with about 100 local assembly Komeito members Thursday night, half were against withdrawing from the coalition, while the other half insisted on leaving. The LDP alone currently retains 196 seats in the lower house, far fewer than the 233 necessary for a majority. So she needs to come up with at least 37, 38 seats, right? 37 or 38 seats. Without the Komeito's 24 seats, party will face additional hurdles to muster the support to elect Takaichi as prime minister. So with 24, that would have given her 200, 220. So she still needed, even with that, she would still need 13 or 14. Speaking to reporters after the meeting with Saito, Takaichi said that Friday's agenda was only supposed to be about Komeito reporting what it had discussed with local assembly members Thursday evening. I was unilaterally informed of Komeito's withdrawal from the coalition, Takaichi said, adding that it's a pity, but that's the conclusion that we've reached. So you can see that Komeito had no intention of actually remaining in the coalition with Takaichi, and it's because of their influence from the CCP. Takaichi said she tried reasoning with Saito, arguing that she and LDP Secretary General Suzuki alone could not make any decision before following party procedure, and that the two parties should meet again next week. Personally, I think that setting up an auditing committee for political funds is a good idea, said Takaichi. She said she would convene a meeting of LDP executives later Friday evening. Takaichi added that Saito told her that regardless of who had become LDP party president, Komeito would have voiced the same concerns on the same issues. I'll do my best to gain the necessary support, Takaichi said, referring to the upcoming parliamentary election for the post of prime minister. Yeah. So originally, it was expected that the diet, which is what the legislature is called in Japan, the diet would have been convened um, on the 14th of next week, and then the election for prime minister was going to be on the 15th. That was the schedule that I was reading in the Japanese press previously, but perhaps that is going to be delayed now. Um, so what does that mean? Well, it means that the current prime minister, what is it? Uh, Shigeru Ishiba. How quickly you forget, right? Ishiba will remain as prime minister, um, as a kind of a lame duck prime minister. But there has to be somebody in the prime minister chair because the prime minister is the commander in chief of the military, I believe, and so they cannot just sort of leave that seat vacant. Right? So yeah, so Ishiba will remain for now as a lame duck. Right? So we will see. We will see how good she is at creating coalitions, and we hope the best. And the reason I'm focusing on this so much is because our blessed central families in Japan have worked hard for her over the last 4 years, um, and they're very very happy that she finally became head of the LDP, and they're very hopeful that she'll become prime minister. I just hope that they're not sort of putting too much faith in her because politician is a politician is a politician. Right? So anyway, that's what's going on in Japan right now. Okay. Now, let's see here. Let's do this one, right? So it turns out that President Trump is not getting the Nobel Peace Prize. But, and I don't know. Are you surprised? I'm not surprised. I don't think they would have given it to him if their very lives depended on it. I think because they hate him so much. Why? Well, because he's not one of them. He's not part of the globalist cabal, right? So anyway, it goes to the opposition leader in Venezuela, and that might be sort of a clever escape for them because now I guess President Trump cannot be quite so critical of uh, of them. Anyway, well, let's see here what she's about. The Nobel Committee awarded this year's Peace Prize to Maria Corina Machado amid calls for President Donald Trump to receive the award in the wake of his brokering a historic deal between Israel and Hamas. Machado, I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Is it Machado? Machado? I'm going to go with Machado. A Venezuelan opposition leader, was described as a brave and committed champion of peace by Jürgen Watne Friednes, chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee. She is receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy, Friednes said. Trump has received several high profile nominations since returning to office. However, the committee's deadline for nominations was January 31st, meaning he could be eligible for next year's prize. During a cabinet meeting on Thursday, Trump was asked about the Nobel Peace Prize but did not comment on the award in his response. Instead, he focused on the possibility of addressing Israel's Knesset. Earlier this week, the Hostages and Missing Families Forum, a group representing the families of hostages and terror victims formed after October 7th, appealed to the committee on Trump's behalf. In this past year, no leader or organization has contributed more to peace around the world than President Trump. While many have spoken eloquently about peace, he has achieved it. While others have offered empty promises, he has delivered tangible results that have saved countless lives, the forum wrote in a letter to the committee dated October 6th. He has not merely spoken of peace, he has delivered it, the forum added. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told Trump in July during a visit to Washington, D.C., that he had nominated the president for the Nobel Peace Prize. Netanyahu handed the letter he sent the committee to Trump when he told him the news. The president has already realized great opportunities. He forged the Abraham Accords. He's forging peace as we speak in one country and one region after another, Netanyahu said. So I want to present you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well deserved. Weeks prior to that meeting, the U.S. and Israel carried out major operations that destroyed Iran's nuclear infrastructure, as both countries warned a nuclear Tehran would be a threat to the world. Well, let's add the word peace. Okay, would be a threat to world peace. Who wrote this? MSN, I guess. Trump was nominated for the award in the past, but was not selected. Notably, U.S. Representative Claudia Tenney, Republican of New York, nominated Trump for the prize in 2020 when he brokered the Abraham Accords, normalizing relations between Israel and Arab nations. Had he won, Trump would have become the fifth U.S. president to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Previous laureates include former President Barack Obama. You got to laugh when you read that because Obama, he was given the prize as soon as right after he became president. Then he went on to start a whole bunch of wars, right? And continue wars that he had inherited or expanded them. So the Peace Prize to Obama really illustrates the fall in the credibility of the Nobel Peace Prize committee. Come on, right? Former President Jimmy Carter, former President Woodrow Wilson, and former President Theodore Roosevelt. Okay. All right, all right, all right. So, what do you think? You think they'll give it to him next year? I guess partly, if the uh, peace accords that he has brokered hold between now and next year, in other words, over the next year, or over the next year, then I think it's possible. And if he does get it next year, if he does get it this time next year, it'll be what, 1 month or less than 1 month before the midterm elections. So maybe it's better this way. What do you think? What do you think? Maybe this is what God wants. Uh, all right, so President Trump, yeah, keep on working for peace. All right, keep on working for peace. But you're not doing it for the prize. All right, you're not doing it for the prize. Uh, I hope he realizes that. All right, let's see here. What else have we got going? Um, this situation with the superintendent of schools in Iowa in Des Moines is very curious, isn't it? It's very curious. How did he uh, become the superintendent of schools um, while not being in the country illegally? I just wonder how he did that. For one thing, he needed a social security number, right? So is his? I'm very curious. Is his social? Does he have a valid social security number, or how did that work? Right? And presumably he has a driver's license, and and he must have a bank account where his checks are cashed. So it's very curious to me how this happened, and I want to know what's going on here. But here they're talking about the executive search firm that helped the school district to hire this guy. So, but I don't think they're really answering my questions here. Right. All right. So if they're not going to answer my questions, then I'm not interested. Okay. CNBC's China's property slump this year is looking much worse than expected, S&P says. The analysts forecast sales of new homes will drop by 8% from last year to between 8.8 trillion yuan and 9 trillion yuan, or $1.23 trillion to $1.26 trillion. That's a far steeper decline than the 3% drop that the analysts had predicted in May. The government will need to continue to support the sector and demand, support the sector and demand, help restore home buyers' confidence. There's something missing in that sentence, all right? China's real estate market is expected to fall. Okay. Okay. Analysts expected the trade war and other external uncertainties would have pushed China to roll out stronger support for the real estate sector. The main reason for the weaker outlook is that home buyers' sentiment is still pretty fragile. So the government will need to continue to support the sector and demand to help restore home buyers' confidence. Okay, so the word "to" was missing in that. That makes sense now. In September 2024, Beijing called for efforts to halt the real estate decline in a high-profile meeting. But after some new measures last year, the political momentum to ramp up further support appeared to slow. And the benchmark for most mortgages has only fallen by 10 basis points so far this year, compared with a 60 basis point reduction in 2024. This signals that Beijing isn't easing policy as aggressively as before, despite the property slump. Right. Well, the communists are experts at you know setting prices, but it looks like they're not doing a very good job in setting the price of capital. We'll see what happens. Eventually, though, the country runs on what? Well, eventually it runs on the economy and runs on capital. So we'll see. And this could be the beginning of a huge drop in China's economy. And of course, that would potentially bring down the Chinese Communist Party, but it would certainly have a very negative effect on economies around the world, including especially Japan and Korea, also the United States to a great extent, and to Europe. So we'll see what happens with this. But um, China, yeah, if they fall, they're not too big to fail, I don't think. Do you think the IMF will step in and say, oh, they're too big to fail? I don't know if they can. I think this is too. Uh, I think this is too big, too big to bail out. Not too big to fail, too big to bail out. We'll see. All right, let's see what else we got here. Fresh Russian incursions raise temperature for NATO in the Baltic Sea. Yeah, we got wars and rumors of war. Yeah, this morning during Hindoke, we're reading the World Scripture too, and we were reading some content about wars and rumors of war. Let's see here. Fresh Russian. No, I'm not. Let me share this with you first. There you go. Fresh Russian incursions raise temperature for NATO in the Baltic Sea. Vaindu Island, a tiny rock outcrop in the Gulf of Finland, is serving as an unlikely barometer for rising tensions between NATO and Russia. On September 19th, three Russian MiG-31 jets entered the Estonian and therefore NATO airspace over Vaindu, remaining in the airspace for 12 minutes and traveling nearly 125 miles west. The Estonian Defense Ministry spokesman told ABC News that the September MiG-31 intrusion was unprecedentedly brazen, but it was far from the first. Italian, Swedish, and Finnish fighter jets were all involved in shadowing or intercepting the MiG-31s, the spokesperson said. Vaindu, Estonia's most northernmost point, was an area of just 15, it has an area of just 15 acres, but the uninhabited island sits at a strategic choke point. It is situated in the busy Gulf of Finland, 14 nautical miles from the Estonian mainland, and 29 miles from south of the Finnish 29 miles south of the Finnish mainland. 13 miles to the northeast is the Russian island of Rodshir. Further east along the maritime corridor are the busy Russian ports of Primorsk and Ust-Luga before the Gulf of Finland reaches its easternmost edge. I guess that's it. Oh yeah, so today was the national day in Taiwan. So you see there the president of Taiwan there, and I guess this is his wife, I suppose. And they unveiled a T-dome air defense system to counter China threat. I wonder what that is. This is a Reuters story. It may not let us see it. Okay, well, Taiwan President Lai Ching-te said on Friday that the government would build the T-dome air defense system to provide multi-layered protection against enemy threats and called on China to renounce the use of force to seize Taiwan. Yeah, so with his wife, Taiwan's First Lady, Wu Mei-ju, on the day he delivers a speech during National Day celebrations in Taipei, October 10, 2025. Democratically governed Taiwan has faced increased military and political pressure from China, which views the island as its own territory. Taiwan is ramping up defense spending and modernizing its armed forces, but faces a China that has a far larger military and is adding advanced new weapons like stealth fighter jets, aircraft carriers, and a huge array of missiles. Lai said in his National Day address that Taiwan is determined to spend more on defense and would, at the end of this year, propose a special budget for military spending, showing the government's determination to protect the island. The increase in defense spending has a purpose. It is a clear necessity to counter enemy threats and a driving force for developing our defense industries, he said. We will accelerate our building of the T-Dome, establish a rigorous air defense system in Taiwan with multi-layered defense, high-level detection, and effective interception, and weave a safety net for Taiwan to protect the lives and property of citizens, Lai said, to applause from the crowd. So today is kind of like Taiwan's July 4th. He added that China should renounce the use of force or coercion to change the status quo across the Taiwan Strait. There was no reaction from Beijing in his speech. Yeah. It's interesting that the journalists always like to put in that line at the end. If they had reacted, they would have reacted with some more warplanes entering into Taiwan's airspace, but I guess they didn't do that either. So that's the good news, right? That's the good news. Okay. Let's see what else is going on here. And yeah, so this is also, I think this was also an important uh, commemoration for North Korea. The the 80th anniversary of the country's ruling party uh, to accelerate efforts to broaden his diplomatic outreach. So now, high profile people from Russia and China have visited Pyongyang this weekend or this week, and um, so, so Kim Jong Un, because of his participation in the Ukraine war, is gaining some friends. And on Thursday, Kim held talks with Vietnamese head of state To Lam, and Lam's visit to North Korea marks the first trip by a top Vietnamese leader to North Korea since the Communist Party General Secretary Nong Dok Man's trip in 2007. So it doesn't happen a whole lot. And so North Korea is riding high right now. That is for sure. And the Vietnamese leader was reported to have expressed his intent to enhance economic cooperation with North Korea and share his country's experience in the economic sector. So that makes it easier then for North Korea to get around economic sanctions by the U.S. and Europe and the United Nations. Observers warned that Kim's diplomatic outreach could come at the expense of international sanctions on the country, which prohibit defense and military cooperation with North Korea. Yeah, so basically, Kim Jong Un is sort of thumbing his nose, shall we say, or showing the middle finger to the international sanctions and the international society that's behind them. Uh, and yeah, he's doing pretty well for himself right now. And we'll see how that fits into God's will. All right, Letitia James indicted. Yeah, okay. Oh, do we need to do that? I don't think so. Okay. Caught on satellite North Korea's secret ships. Let's look at this one. Japan concerned about rapid one-sided yen moves, finance ministry says. Let me share this with you. So the foreign exchange market is causing concern among the uh, Japanese leaders because now well, it's back up to 153, right? And it's not only the level but the speed at which it is rising. The dollar is rising. Dollar is getting stronger against the yen. The dollar itself, just to remind you, is the value of the dollar is going down, and that's value. Whenever we talk about value, you have to talk about it value in relation to what. And so when I say it's going down in relation to goods and services in the United States, going down by perhaps 8 to 10%. I think that's a year, and I think that's a generally accepted figure now, outside of the Federal Reserve, ivory tower, 8 to 10% a year. But then the Japanese yen is going down against the dollar. So that means that its value against goods and services is going down even more quickly than the United States. And not just Japan, but also Korea, also other currencies are going down in relationship to the dollar. And so a lot of people around the world right now are a little bit concerned about what's going on there. Japanese finance minister Katsunobu Kato said on Friday that the government was concerned about excessive volatility in the foreign exchange market as the yen came under pressure due to fiscal concerns. So, and this is because Takaichi has said she will pursue an expansionist policy. In other words, she wants to increase the money supply so that uh, companies can borrow more and create more jobs and create more profit, pay more taxes. At least that's her idea, and that's she gets that from former Prime Minister Abe, who was assassinated. We are recently seeing one-sided rapid moves on the foreign exchange market, he said, signaling concerns over the yen's sharp downturn since the election of fiscal dove Sanae Takaichi as the ruling party's new leader on Saturday. The Japanese yen is on pace for a near 4% drop over the week, its biggest decline since early October last year, as investors fret about Takaichi's more physically expansive policy stance and fast receding chances of a near term rate hike. As I have stated before, what's important is that exchange rates move in a stable manner, reflecting economic fundamentals, Kato said at a radio news conference. The government will thoroughly monitor for excessive fluctuations and disorderly movements in the forex market. Yeah, they don't like it when they start to lose control. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, well, shall we take a look at what is concerning them? Let's take a look at the numbers here. Here we go. Now, these numbers are just sort of the current. But here, if we look at the foreign exchange, Japanese. Oh, okay, well, they probably because of what this guy said. I think that's probably why the yen now is getting stronger against the dollar over the past few hours. It was up to 153. Now it's down to 152. And one of his motivations for saying that, the finance minister saying that, was to influence the foreign exchange market, and that's what they do. That's how they try it. One of the things they do to control the foreign exchange market. The DXY itself is also down a little bit, but it's above 99. And if you look at the graph over the past, let's see, this is year. Okay, well, let's look at the year. Okay, so uh, since the beginning of the year, that's the beginning of the year there, it was at 109. And so it's down about 10% from the beginning of the year. But it may continue to climb during the remainder of the year. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. Yeah. It depends on what the Fed does. It also depends on what Takaichi does, what Japan does. If Takaichi does not become prime minister, um, how would that affect it? Would the yen rise? Probably, I suspect, but I don't know. But political turmoil is also always bad for markets. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm not going to predict financial markets. And no financial advice here. All right, time's up. Gotta go. All right. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow, Saturday. I'll see you then. And in the meanwhile, God bless Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly.